talking with Ellie Burhans, who is a historian, a feminist, and lately a community activist trying to stop the construction of a data center in Albany, New York. Data centers are much in the news now, and I'm happy that you could join us. Ellie, the legislature in the final days of the session made New York possibly the first state that's going to put a halt, a moratorium on construction of data centers, and also when they are allowed to be built again, if they are, to regulate them strongly. So, does that end your protest? Does that make you happy?
Well, first, thank you for inviting me to your show. It's an honor to be here with you. And to answer the question, I think it just puts a pause on everything, right? Um, I think the concern about these data centers isn't going to go away just because there's a year moratorium on them. And I think that we're seeing this in other states as well. I know just recently, Governor Pritzker just
This is in
prevented data.
Illinois.
Yeah, from Illinois, he just prevented data centers from getting tax write-offs and tax credits. So New York State might be the first, but I think I think there are other people in line.
And I'm jumping the gun because while the legislature, both houses have passed it, is yet to be considered by the governor. There are no indications that I'm aware of whether she will or will not, or do something in between, like negotiate a different deal. Do you have any insight onto that?
I've got no insight, but I will say that every morning I call Governor Hochul's office and I speak with a lovely intern and I tell them exactly how I feel about data centers, and I encourage anyone else who feels strongly to do the same thing.
Okay, I need you to back up 1 minute. I'm sorry if this is a stupid question, but we seem to skip over it. They're in the news all the time. What exactly is a data center and why should we be afraid of them?
Yeah, so data centers are basically a big warehouse of computer servers. They are sometimes mostly run remotely, and they generate a ton of heat. They take up a ton of electricity. They also make a lot of sound. So there are people who live in communities with data centers where they're getting migraines and they're unable to sleep. The other thing that they do is they cause a lot of light pollution. And in Grimes County in Texas, the light pollution is thought, it's not proven yet, but it's thought to reduce the fertility of cows in cattle farmers for Texas. So just a lot of weird things that accompany with these data centers. But basically, they're just really large warehouses full of computers.
Wow, and they are the complaints most often heard are about massive use of water because these computers have to be cooled down, and massive use of electricity, which mostly goes to support, if I've got this right, please correct me if I'm not, AI and Bitcoin.
Yeah, so it's Gen AI and it's Bitcoin mining. And again, it just produces a ton of electricity. People see their utility bills spike, both water and electric. So, just something that we want to consider when we're planning these things.
And are we planning them? I did a little bit of research, and if it's correct and up to date, as New York considers a pause, as you put it, there are just under 30 centers around the state that are proposed or actually going through some sort of review. And one of them, of course, is in Albany, New York, where you are from and you have been protesting. Can you tell us about that proposal at a former convent site?
Yeah, so Guild Ventures, which is now the owner of the Kenwood Convent site, which in 2003 caught on fire and burned to the ground, they are proposing a huge tech center with a very large data center that will take up, I think it's like 180 megawatts or kilowatts, and it's supposed to take up the electricity, according to the Times Union, of 150,000 homes. So think of everyone who lives here in the capital region, and that's the amount of electricity that this data center is going to use.
I actually, and my research shows that yes, they did apply and mentioned 180,000 because you're required to put a potential maximum, but the expected load is significantly less than that, 20 megawatts. Does that change your mind at all, or is that just, no, you're skeptical. She's
No,
shaking her
because,
head.
so it's not just the data centers for me. I'm really concerned about what Gen AI can do to our society.
Yeah.
in terms of deep fakes, the Senate and the Assembly also passed a bill to prohibit and regulate using AI for deep fakes, because think of all the political chaos you can cause with those things.
Give me some examples. I know you have them.
Well, I am not the smartest person in the room, but I could think of an example of someone creating a Gen AI picture of a political candidate doing something inappropriate or doing something kind of weird or stupid. I know that certain politicians use Gen AI to make themselves look important or powerful. And without regulating this, I think that it could have a lot of consequences for our elections.
Hmm. What you're in, is it an organized group, or it actually to me sounds, I'm asking this question because in reading about the protests in Albany, it sounds kind of organic. It's kind of coming together gradually, and there's no one person or group in charge. Is that accurate?
It's totally accurate. I got to give credit to a woman named Donna DiMaria, who spent days on Facebook on every single comment on the Times Union and on all over Albany and a bunch of other social media accounts. She posted that she would be protesting at the planning board meeting on Henry Johnson Boulevard in Albany
Hmm.
on Tuesday, I think it was June 2nd, at 5:30, and to show up. And a bunch of people showed up. I run a Facebook page that just sort of like is an aggregate data, like here's information, here's who should you be calling. And so I showed up and actually was able to grab a lot of photos of the event to, use for awareness. I know that Indivisible Albany is doing an event on June 20th, but I
I
think
was,
that the most organized group that it is, it's just a bunch of people, and I have to say, across the political spectrum that showed up and said, no, thank you to this.
yeah, I one of my overriding research interests is how these protests come together. And this one seems to me to be very, as you described it, kind of organic.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
you
I'm
had
going to be really honest. I got a little tipsy on some wine one night and was like, I'm going to form a protest group.
that's amazing. And Albany Indivisible has called for a protest on
Yeah.
June 20th, as you mentioned. And I wanted to ask about that because this was before we had this kind of surprise action by the legislature to move ahead on a moratorium and strict regulation. The protest is still on.
To my knowledge, it's still on. I don't have a connection to Albany Indivisible. I wish I did. I just don't live in Albany, so I hook up with my
Right,
Indivisible.
right.
So yeah, they haven't taken it off their website. I registered. They haven't sent an email saying it's not
Right.
happening.
It seemed I should mention to my listeners that Ellie lives in Slingerlands. It's close to Albany, but not in Albany. And there are indivisible groups in each one of the communities, and they generally work together, but not always. And it seems to me as if, like you, the indivisible leaders think this is a problem that's going to continue, although we're pausing it now. So. Let me ask you some more about the protests.
Sure.
In Genesee County, where there's also a huge data center being proposed and being considered, um, it is upset about the moratorium. That if it happens, leaders there say, who are in favor of the data center, say that this steps all over home rule, that this decisions about whether to build data centers should be up to the local communities, to the cities and municipalities, not to the state. How do you respond to that?
I mean, I get their point of view. I disagree respectfully. And the reason is that if we do it at a state level, you know, it prevents data centers from going from one community to the next door community. It's still going to affect the community that they originally went to, but they're going to build it in the second community. Um, and again, let's just pause a second and figure out what these data centers are really going to do to our community. Are people going to get sick? Is this going to be like dumping toxic waste in the Hudson River? Where we're realizing that people get sick and they have cancers that are related to certain types of chemicals that are sprayed on things. Let's just do the research and do this smart if we're going to do it.
Is there any research being done at the state by health officials or environmental officials that you're aware of? I could not find any, but
I couldn't find any. I know that
Mhm.
there are processes that when you're applying for certain building permits and certain projects that you have to go through a state and a municipal level. I don't know what the requirements are, and I don't know if the state is doing a larger, a larger research project into the effects of these data centers.
Okay. One other argument put forth by proponents of data centers is this is progress, man. And you're what the heck are you trying to stop? It isn't going to do you any good. We've never stopped technology. You're just standing in the way. Tech development is going to happen, and we need the centers. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I'm not standing in the way of progress. There's really interesting work about AI in terms of early detection of breast cancer and other
Mhm.
forms of cancer that are just lethal, with low recovery rates, right? I don't want to stop that. But I do think that we need to pause, figure out what these data centers are going to do to our health, our community's health, but also, let's talk about what AI is doing to our society. We didn't regulate social media, right? And there was misinformation campaigns. Kids are committing suicide because of seeing other people on Instagram. And lawmakers are now trying to pull it all back, right? You've got Josh Hawley trying to work with educators on the Democratic side of the aisle to try to do, social media and like try to do some like very, very vague AI regulations at the federal level. And so, maybe we just need to plan our progress instead of just go into that wild unknown completely unprepared.
It's very interesting. Have you or anybody else that you're working with in opposing the data center given thought to what you'd like to see done with that property? The former convent, and it was a former private school as well. It's like 75 acres. There were big fires have damaged it. What would you like to see done with that instead?
Well, I think a lot of people just responded to the news, right? Because it was a big
Mhm.
shock. And then took some time to like figure out what to do in terms of protesting the data center. I'm not going to speak for everyone. I'm just going to speak for myself. Um, but we're talking about this affordability crisis, and it's taking up all the news in terms of gas being expensive, housing being expensive. Well, why don't we do a project in which we build houses, right? The biggest problem about the affordability crisis is that there's no housing inventory. People can't buy houses because they're not houses.
Mhm.
So why can't we do that? You
Oh my
know,
God, that sounds so easy and simple.
right? And again, not the smartest person in the room. So smarter people should figure this out.
You're pretty smart. In fact, your research interest is so intriguing that may be a whole other podcast, which is military uniforms for women. I think that's fascinating. How did you get involved in this, other than as you've described, you just kind of heard about it? Does it tie into your historical interests and research?
I don't know if it does. I saw the news, and I was reading the comment section because I do that, even though that's highly, highly um, don't read the comment section, basically. I do it anyway. I'm terminally online, and I just saw all these people saying, "No, I don't want this. What do we do? What do we do?" And so I said, well, what if I just formed a Facebook group where we could come together and like share information? Because again, that's what I do. Um, I'm,
Hmm.
I'm a yapper. And so that's really how I got into it. I mean, I do mourn the loss of a historic structure. And as a Catholic, I'm concerned about the nuns that are buried on that site. That's
Interesting.
hallowed ground, right? But I don't know if I tie this into my history. There are other protesting that I do that I
Right,
tie into my
right.
historical studies.
And do you do other protests? Are you part of the No Kings and
Yeah, I've
the
been
other
at every No
anti-MAGA
King.
demonstrations? Yeah.
Yeah, I've been at
Yes.
every No Kings, and I was asked to speak about the rise of fascism at one of the hands-off rallies back in 2025.
Interesting. I want to thank you for your time, and we'll be back to check in with you, and we'll pay attention to what the governor does with these two bills that are before her on data centers, regulating and stopping them for a while, and where the protests go from here. Thank you so much.